fancy meat computers. How's everybody? How's everybody today? How's everybody? How's everybody today? Aha! It seems like they're in the process of finally removing the dislike button. Those of you who have the dislike button, this is your last chance to ratio me before the end of the semester, probably. Or the end of dislikes on YouTube. So, you know. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Oh, I'm actually I'm doing pretty well. It's a snowy day today. I don't know where you are in your part of the world, but if you're in Hamilton today, you woke up to a nice fresh blanket of snow on the ground, which is, I think, what we woke up to yesterday, so I think it might be a cold winter. But yeah, it's, I don't know, it's like, some people see the snow and they're like, ugh. But I see the snow and I'm like, cozy winter. It is currently actively snowing, yes. I disliked that midterm, you know what I mean? Yeah. Yeah. We don't talk about the midterm? Well, I mean, we could talk about the midterm. I think at least I owe you people an apology. Let me just see here. Let me just pull up my slides so I'm not distracted by the fact I don't have slides up. PDFs. Databases. There we go. Perfect. So, better than the first one for you. First of all, I'd like to apologize. I'm sure everybody's aware of the situation of what happened there, but in case you missed the memo, in case you like logged in at like afternoon or something and you just kind of missed it, what happened was during the initial release of the midterm at 9 o'clock on Saturday. So this is like an interesting window into how things actually work in the Jupyter system, right? What happens, the way that these assignments and tests are generated, is there's one sort of master file that contains all of the questions, all of the solutions, all of the test cases, both visible and hidden. From that file, the things that you aren't supposed to see get tagged in that file, and one of the pre-processing steps that Jupyter performs, the sort of generate process, removes everything that's been tagged for removal. Now, as far as I'm aware, that tagging did take place. It's just for some reason the Jupyter system failed to remove the solutions from the test before it distributed it. So I'm not, like, we still don't know what the root of the problem was. We don't know what caused it. All we know is that the part that pulled these solutions out of the test paper failed to work, and since it's never failed like that before, you know, we trusted that it worked stupidly and distributed a copy of the test that contained the solutions. So be it. Of course, like, once that happened, like, even if that's the case for only 5 minutes, the test has been compromised, right? You can't do that test now because it's been compromised. So yeah. So as not to waste the effort, you can now consider the old midterm to be practice for the exam. You know that's like that was a test we were going to set for you, right? So you know that the length of the questions and the number of questions is appropriate for a midterm. So you can expect the exam to be slightly longer. Jupiter betrayed everyone. Yes, I agree. So, essentially, I was kind of... So I'll paint you a picture, right? It's like, it's Saturday morning. Here I am, making some French toast for ma femme with the bread that my wife made in the bread maker that she got for her birthday a couple of weeks ago. And I get this text message, and it's like, we have an emergency. You need to get on Slack right now. And I'm like, there's no actual name attached to this, but it sounds like an emergency, so I guess I'll check Slack. And then this whole situation was happening, you know? But yeah. So, if nobody pinged you a complaint, would you still know that the test was invalid? It's kind of sad to say, but probably not. But someone would have said something about that one eventually, you know? But yeah, like, yeah, it was... The way that we had heard about it first was through the students. It would have been kind of suspicious if we got, like, no questions on Piazza, you know? But, so, essentially what happened from there... essentially what happened from there is that, we sort of had an all-hands-on-deck situation. And, 3 of the TAs and myself managed to work continuously through the morning, and in about 4 hours we were able to cobble together an alternate test. Which I think equates to between 14 and 16 man-hours that were put into test number 2. Man, please give your TAs some love this week, because that was not, you know, that was kind of a hectic scenario, you know. But yeah, so we got the alternate test pushed and managed to recover the day, but it was yeah. So essentially, the way that we were able to put that test together so quickly is we took test questions from previous offerings of the course and performed some mutations over them so that the answers would be different, but they're still essentially, like, in essence, they're still asking very similar things. So that's sort of how the test was put together so hastily. But, yeah, so I'm just going to answer some of these questions. I thought the midterm was pretty good, better than the first one. Well, there you go. I thought the wizard questions were cool. Thank you very much. That's, I like the wizard questions, too. I think they needed a reminder for the course eval sometime this week. Need the denominator knocked off. Yes! So, that's a good point. Good point. Let me talk about that. So, I posted an announcement. Bop. So, course evaluations are live. They have been actually last week as well, but, you know. The course evaluations are of particular... So, the course evaluations are here. The URL link is evals.mcmaster.ca/login.php. The course evaluations are of particular importance to sessional professors such as myself, who are, for whom promotion is primarily based on how well we review. Your honest feedback is greatly appreciated. Please, I'm not, like... I can't tell whether you give me a good or bad review. There's no way that it's possible for it to impact your grade in any way. Everything is completely anonymized, and I don't even get the results until halfway through the next semester. So, please don't imagine that, like, you have to give me a 10-star review. No, that's not how this works. And besides, your honest feedback is way, way more useful to me than you guys being a bunch of yes men. So, also, if we get over a 75% response rate, I will knock 2 marks off of the denominator of the first midterm. Yay! So there you go. So there's a small marks incentive to get those evals in. Your comments would be greatly appreciated. If you're sort of new to the university this semester, course evaluation is like, it's your opportunity to let the university know how its programs are going. You know, it's sort of soliciting comments. And I actually do read my evaluations. I actually do take my course evaluations into account as I'm trying to continuously update both the courses and my own teaching practice. If you liked the course and are going to give me a good evaluation, please please submit that, because, like, please don't let apathy get in the way of submitting that course evaluation, because, like, with this course in particular, I have a feeling I'm going to get ratioed hard by all the people that I've been giving academic dishonesty citations to. So, please review the course. Please don't. Please, you know, please don't let me get ratioed. I'm going to get ratioed, I know it. Anyway. So how important do you say databases are for the final? There'll probably be 1 question on them. The slides are really long on this one. Yeah. If we had slept in for 10 minutes, we could have written the first one. Yes, but everybody would have had to. Jupiter betrayed everyone. Yep. Very true. Was the first midterm harder than the second one? I don't know. Maybe. I like, kind of, like, with the, I don't know. We'll see. It'll all depend on how the marks come back. That's usually how I judge how difficult a test was, by, like, how well or poorly people did on it. How much longer would the exam be, given that we're given the same amount of time? Hard to say. Hard to say. If it's not written yet, then I don't know for sure. But normally it's a little bit longer. Oh my gosh, that's a lot of question. I don't mean to be rude. I'm just curious. Are the TAs paid to answer questions during the tests? Yes! So the way that being a TA works is I get 10 hours a week out of them. And normally the way I do it is I assign someone, one of the TAs at least, to be the piazza person. So that person has reduced duties in other respects and is responsible for answering questions on the forum more of the time. So, yeah. 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 Yeah, which is what Mark is saying. I pulled out my D&D character sheets to make test cases for the wizard question. Ha! Perfect. Wording is the only thing I had trouble with on the test. Material itself is easy, but I couldn't understand what the question so wanted. Yeah, that's like half the battle, right? Will the exam just be released on Avenue to avoid this kind of problem? No, we can avoid this type of problem by just, you know, double, triple checking things, which we will do. But, yeah. And besides, the test solutions got pushed to Avenue as well. So, yeah. Only critique that I have is that I didn't do a cooking stream. Well, the night is still young. I have, is there not enough pictures of Spider-Mark? Yeah. What things are affected by our rating the next time you run the same course? Well, like there's some stuff that I know, you know, and, you know, like, take, for example, like, how quickly feedback is given, right? You get, like, you get to rate on a scale of, like, 5 or 10 how quickly you get the feedback. I think it's on a scale of 5. And it's like, if the feedback has been slow in a particular semester, it's not like I'm unaware of that, and I've likely been pushing it. It's just the way that the semester goes, you know. Like, I imagine I'll get hammered for quickness of feedback for marking on 3MI3, which I'm teaching this semester. But, you know, I've been having a lot of problems with the TAs in that course. One of them actually quit, so, you know, I know about that. It's really more like the general comments that I'm interested in, you know, particularly, like, comments on, like, things that could be improved or things that could be included, that sort of thing. You know, like, general comments like, oh, the course is, like, you know, the course is too hard and stuff like that. It's like general stuff like that. The more specific a comment is, the more actionable it is, which is, you know, the more likely it is for me to actually incorporate it. But yeah. So exams are not like 10 times harder than the test? No. No, I'd say like 9.5 times as hard, yeah. Okay. But yeah. Cool. Anyway, we should get on to talking about stuff. Talking about our actual material for today. Yeah. Nah, don't worry. I was being facetious. That can be our word of the day today. Facetious. It's also pretty difficult to spell. Anyway, so, databases. So, well, you know, they're always hiring in the Army. So, let's talk about databases. So, databases then. We're going to be talking about a very specific, we're going to be talking about a very specific type of database. It's sort of like the venerable database. Select student from 1MD3 where angry equals 1 and mark equals low. Wah, wah, wah. Yes, really. That's an SQL query, by the way, that Mark just put into the chat. Except he's forgot the semicolon. So, with databases, there are several different, shall we say, competing forms of databases in the present day. The sort of non-SQL database model has been gaining influence and traction. If you query the databases of something like Twitter, for example, you're more likely to find things are JSON-based, right? Everyone in DB2, you don't use semicolons, and DB2 is what I used in 3DB3. Ha, well, fine. Venerable. Yes. So, so it's a newer technology. It's most popularly exemplified by MongoDB, although there are a fair number of different database systems that use the JSON. Like, it's basically, if you look at the file that the database is an interface to, it's going to be a JSON most of the time with these sort of no SQL databases. But we're going to be talking about traditional SQL relational databases. So, like programming languages, databases allow us to process and store data. However, data is stored in dedicated files. Data is stored in dedicated files and loaded as needed. Data can be much larger than the available memory. So there is no need to explicitly open files and read data. Data can be accessed simultaneously by clients, either locally or remotely. Data is atomically updated. So atomically, think atoms, think indivisibility. So this is actually a fairly important point. When you're talking about an operation in a computer that is quote-unquote atomic, that means that it can't be interrupted. That means that that process cannot be interrupted mid-operation. So that's a very, very important property for ensuring the correctness of the database. It's like if you have one process going and another process can interrupt it, go, and then this one resumes, that can cause a whole, like, just a cacophony of errors, which you don't want. So maintaining the atomicity of your database operations is a very important property. So data must be structured in specific ways, for example, in tables in a relational database, or in the form of a nested dictionary / list structure, as in a JSON, and complex queries can be written in a dedicated query language. So this is the main thing here, is dedicated query language. So the idea is, when you have a database, you have a file, and you have a language that allows you to perform queries or operations over that database. To some extent, the actual means of storage of the database itself is hidden from the user, in the same way that you remember the mean calculator example that we did in the material on classes? It's the same type of idea. You have one standardized interface, and many other, many different, different vendors have their own ways of accessing different databases. Similarly, please write atomic Git commits for next semester. Yes. So yeah, it's cacophony. It's like caca meaning noisy, and phony meaning like sound. There you go. Cacophony. A harsh, discordant mixture of sounds. Just like post-rock. Ha! Dunking on post-rock. If you don't know what post-rock is, consider yourself blessed. So, relational databases. Data and items and their relationships are stored in tables. A table is a collection of records, aka rows, aka objects, aka entities, with fields, aka values, columns, or attributes. So, basically, if you were to take an SQL database, peel off its front end and take a look inside of it, it would look a lot like an Excel spreadsheet, right? Yeah, but it's art. Yeah, but, is it though? Should we perhaps not have a more rigorous and exclusive definition of art? And it's intentional, man. Just because it's intentional doesn't make it good. Geez, like, John Lennon and Yoko Ono's album Milk and Honey was intentional. That doesn't mean it was good. And if you don't know what that thing is, go look it up. But yeah, so if you peel off the skin of one of these SQL databases, like, what you look at is very much like an Excel spreadsheet. You've got a number of tables, each of those tables having a name. You have, inside of each table, a number of rows, which denote particular entries, and each row has a number of columns, which describe the attributes of each of the entries. So, here is an example scenario: video rental store. We want to create a database for running a video rental store. So, if we want to track videos in a rental store, we will need to track A, all of the movies we have available to rent, our customers, and which customers have rented which movies. For this, we'll need 3 tables: movies, customers, and rentals. So, for example, I see the chat has opinions about art. That's awesome. So, for an example of some data, we might have movies. So, we've got various movies here. We have 6 entries. The fields movie ID, title, genre, and rating. Each table in a relational database needs a schema. So a schema is essentially a collection of field names combined with the data type each field expects. So one of the things that might throw off, you off when you're moving your brains over from Python into relational databases, or frankly any other programming language, is that we expect things to be more rigidly typed in SQL than we do in Python. And incidentally, the correct way to think of SQL is as a completely separate and like a separately identified programming language. So when you have a field in an SQL database, that field may only be populated by values of the type of that field. This is even different from how Excel does things. In Excel, you can mix and match what data is stored in which cell, but in an SQL database, if this is an integer, then it is an integer, and it is never anything except an integer. Yeah. So, domain-specific programming language, precisely. So, the valid types that you have in any databasing system, it's going to be, yeah, I tried learning SQL on my own, got so confused by all the SQL formats out there. NoSQL, MySQL, PostgreSQL. Yeah, we're going to use Sqlite here. So, yeah, I'm going to talk about that in a couple of slides. So the data types that you have available for you in databasing, in general, are integer, real, text, Boolean, and date. Depending on the vendor of the databasing software that you're using, you may have a lot more than these. You may have only a few more than these. But in general, the data types supported will vary depending on which specific implementation of a database you use, right? Our SQL. Yes. With the Bugs Bunny communist meme. Yes, absolutely. Actually, oh. I gotta write that down. That's a good meme idea. Our SQL communist bugs. There we go. There we go. So, in this particular database, for this particular table, our schema will be movie ID is an integer, title, genre, and rating will all be text values. So, let's talk about SQL specifically. So SQL stands for Structured Query Language. It is a very widely used database query language. For example, I'm like dead certain that the back end of Mosaic, for example, is running on SQL. Pretty sure. Yeah. So it's based on Codd's relational database model from 1970. So this goes back, about as far as C programming. It can be used to interact with a database. So relational databases are focused on the interactions. The database, the way that the database is sort of built up is sort of separate. All you're concerned about is sending it queries, right? So queries can do things such as fetching a set of records, adding data to the table, modifying data, and deleting data. The syntax is mostly independent of vendor. So, we need to talk a little bit about vendors, right? Sometimes the memes hit a little too close to home. Yeah. Tell me about it. So SQL sort of operates on a much older paradigm for software development. In the present day, you see a lot of the open source, like the open source movement has really taken on, it's become like a very, I would say almost dominant way that software is usefully developed these days. So, open source gang. Let me hear you in the chat, open source gang. There's an older model for software development, though. This is the model upon which the original databasing software was developed. It's the model upon which the C compilers were originally developed. And this is essentially it, right? Someone, somewhere, would come up with a specification, right, that specified a program, right? A big, thick document that, like, for example, the C manual described how to construct a C compiler, right? The SQL manual described how to construct an SQL database. Companies would then purchase the rights to create an implementation of that specification, right? So, IBM would purchase the rights to the C compiler or SQL or whatever, and they would create their own implementation. Each one would have slightly different, a slightly different set of things implemented, right? Because it was a different company doing it each time, and any ambiguity in the specification was inevitably going to lead to differences of interpretation between different teams working on different projects that were trying to implement the same thing, right? So, essentially, this is what happened with SQL. So, there are a large number of different SQL vendors. They're called vendors. And each one has a very slightly different interpretation of SQL. The fortunate thing is that when it comes to learning SQL, you don't have to learn SQL for each particular vendor's implementation. It's more like you learn general SQL, and then, if you're working in Oracle's version, you'll learn a few of the little things that Oracle does that's different from everybody else. But yeah, so this was the commercial software, the commercial software model for big institutions. The idea would be that a vendor would develop this databasing software and then sell it using salespeople to like governments or institutions or other like, you know, organizations that need databasing, banks, you know. But yeah, so that's how things used to work, and that's why there's a million different SQL implementations. But yeah. So anyway, SQL also supports transactions such as begin, commit, and rollback, authorization, stored functions, and more. SQL is a fully formed programming language. It's Turing complete, so you can do anything in SQL that you can do in any other programming language. SQL is more general than the examples in this set of slides suggest. The result of an SQL query, for example, can be used as the input of another one. And recently, NoSQL databases for storing differently structured data and cloud storage are becoming popular. There are many database programs available. So for commercial, you have commercial options such as Oracle, Microsoft MySQL Server, which is probably integrated into Microsoft Access as well. In terms of open source, you've got MySQL, MariaDB, PostgreSQL, Sqlite, and MongoDB, just to name a very small number of them. Most use SQL for interacting with the database, although some have slight differences. We will use Sqlite in this course. So Sqlite is a widely used serverless relational database manager. So a lot of the time with SQL databases, it's off on some server somewhere. You log in with logging credentials, you know, typity, you know, add your data, and then somebody else logged in somewhere else can view the data that you're you know, entering in, and all kinds of fun stuff like that. Sqlite isn't like that. The point of Sqlite is that you it's like Sqlite is about as close to like a spreadsheet application as you can get, but still be programming with SQL. So let me finish this slide, then I'll answer your question. So that is to say it doesn't have a server. It's just interacting with a file on your file system just like anything else, right? Whereas with a server-based SQL implementation, you would have to log into the server, and the software running on the server interacts with a file that's stored remotely on the server, right? SQL does everything locally. So we don't have to run any additional background service. So not only that, SQLite does not need to spoof a local host, so it doesn't have to trick your computer into thinking that it's going out onto the internet when it's not. Sqlite is not efficient for large databases or multiple users, but it is a very good learning tool because it is a simplified version of SQL. So you can learn the language without having to worry about all the technical nitty-gritty. Sqlite is pre-installed on Mac and Linux as well, possibly, as well as with Python, or you can download it from sqlite.org. So let's just, okay. sqlite.org. Here we go. So, sqlite.org, this is the web page. In order to download, you click here. Then you scroll down. If you're running a Windows machine, pre-compiled binaries for Windows operating systems. You'll want to get Sqlite tools. There you go. A bundle of command line tools for managing Sqlite database files, including the command line shell, a difference program, and Sqlite 3 analyzer, but the command line shell is what you want. Looks very modern. Yeah, I guess. Probably not. So whatever your operating system is, you can get it there. So let's see if I have it. There we do. We do have it. So Sqlite 3, if you just type it in your command line, if you're in Linux, basically, once you launch the command line shell in Windows as well, you'll get this this command prompt, and that's how you enter your database queries. Anaconda comes with Sqlite 3. Is that fine? So long as you can get at this command line interface. If you can get the command line interface, then you're good. Will the database browser for Sqlite 3 work? I would prefer if you just used command line, to be honest. Like, since nothing we're going to be doing is particularly difficult, and because it's really, really useful to learn the queries, this is the best way to do it, I feel. Which file do we download? Whichever one corresponds to your operating system. Make sure you get the tools, though. Sqlite 3 with the tools. So, yes. Yeah. So, teaching 1MD3. Sqlite 3, videostore.db. There we go. Isn't there a Python module for Sqlite? Why, yes! Yes, there is, my friend. We will be talking about it in not too much time. Indeed. So let's get at it, shall we? First thing to do is to create a database. What is with Windows Phone 8? Don't ask me, man. You don't remember the Windows phones? The attempt that Microsoft made at writing operating systems for telephones, and then got crushed by Android, just like everybody else? What does the transient in-memory database mean? Where does it say that? They have a folding phone right now. I mean, yeah. You mean the Star Trek communicator? Alright. So this is how you create a table, right? Create table, movies. You then provide the schema, right? Oh, when I started SQL. Transient in-memory database just means I didn't open up a file, right? So what transient in-memory database means is that it's storing, like if I didn't load a file that time, so it would just store my data in RAM and delete it when I stopped. That's the warning that it was giving. But this time I opened it with a file specified, so I'm actually saving to a file this time. Yeah. Yeah. I want to delete some stuff, but it feels like cutting wires on a bomb. Yes, it will feel like that. Absolutely. I'm pretty sure you should have an undo function, though. Anyway, so, movie, I'll just call it ID, is an integer. Title is text. Genre is text. Rating is text. So now, if I do dot tables, I can see I have the movies table. Ta-da! So one thing that's important to note about the manner in which commands are entered, you can use upper or lowercase. You don't have to do the keywords in all caps like this. However, for the purposes of this lesson, we're going to have the keywords in all caps to distinguish the keywords from the regular terms, like the, from the regular words in the language. Is that now a new file in your directory? Yes. So if I open up a new tab in the same directory, you can see videostore.db has been created. And if you cat that, you can see it just gives you nothing. It's binary. It's stored in binary. It's not stored in plain text, so viewing it doesn't really make a lot of sense. So, there are a couple of types of tags that you can apply to the elements of a schema in order to sort of restrict how data is entered into your database. So, primary keys are useful to state that a particular thing should be unique for every element in the database, right? So if you think about an actual video store, you would have like each video that you had in the video store, even if it was the same, like even if you had like multiple copies of The Exorcist or something, or multiple copies of Star Wars, right? Each one of those like discs or VHSs would have a unique serial number, right? Even if they were even if you had multiple that had the same title, right? So that's what the primary key is for. If you specify something as a primary key, then if you try to enter in a new entry, if you try to add a new entry that has the same value for that field as some other entry that already is in the database, you will be prevented from adding it. That's what the primary key does. Required fields are, that just specifies that a field must be put in, right? You can't have an entry that doesn't have this field. That's what required says. So, in theory, I already created the table, so I'm not going to recreate it, but in theory, the movie ID should be a primary key because, you know, ID numbers, generally speaking, should be unique for every entry, just like your SIN number is uniquely identifying you as a person. You then have, you know, we might say that the title of the movie is required, but, you know, it may not be required to provide a rating or a genre, even though there is a rating not rated, which, you know, so, you know, it's not like you'd leave it blank, but yeah. So, I think that we'll, yeah, I think we'll stop here, continue next time. Any questions? Do we need to download an independent version of Sqlite on Windows even if you have Python? Might be useful, you know? It's like, it's very quick and simple. I don't think you even have to install it. You just, like, unzip the package and run the executable. Yeah. Do you like Fire Emblem? I used to like Fire Emblem back in the GBA days before they ruined it with fan service. Yeah. If you're on Windows, the thing I would recommend doing, I would recommend just downloading Sqlite 3. When can we expect the marks back so I can cry? As I understand it, the TAs are still working on the test cases, because that's, like, the hidden test cases were, like, a thing that we could not get done that hastily. So, like, we're still working on putting together the back end of it. We should have the marks out by the end of the week. Can I explain what is inside of a database file? To some extent, I don't need to. Right? The whole point of a database, the whole point of having a database is that you don't have to worry about what's going on inside of the database file itself. All you have to worry about is correctly interacting with the interface. But it's essentially keeping a... It's like a binary file, but it's like a CSV file, but stored in binary format. That's it, really. Yeah. Do you think we'll get to the machine learning topic? Shaking my magic 8-ball. Try again next semester. If you want to learn the machine learning stuff, I have some videos in the back catalog on this channel that where I was able in semester, like it really depends on the semester. Sometimes I can get to it, sometimes I can't. I don't think I'm going to be able to. I think I'm going to spend most of my time doing this stuff. But yeah, yep. The GBA games are my faves. Yes, well, they're the best ones. That's why. Particularly Sacred Stones. I liked Sacred Stones a lot. If we achieve 40 out of 40 waiting on Avenue without A9 and A10, if we don't submit A9 and A10, we won't go down, right? Yes? I guess so? Like, I guess the question you're asking is, if I got all of the bonus marks ever, can I skip the last assignment? And I think you probably can. Don't quote me on that. Any inside information on the Omicron virus, if the Omicron virus will mean online learning coming January? First of all, Omicron variant, not virus. It's not a new... Well, I don't know how distinct it is from, like, Delta or Alpha, but your guess is as good as mine. However, okay. I have another class to get to, so I will answer that very quickly. Look at the track record, right? Whenever cases go up and there's a new variant, they start introducing additional lockdown measures. That I've heard talk about this one, that the vaccines don't work on it or something. So it seems like they're trying to drum up popular support for more lockdowns. If that actually comes to pass, then, like, the thing I fear is that, like, the university is going to drag all of these international students back into Canada, and then 3 weeks later they're going to lock everything down again. Like, that's, like... The position that I've maintained this entire time is I don't really believe that I'll ever be able to actually teach an in-person class ever again in my life. So far, they're not, you know, we'll see. We'll see. I'll believe it when I see it that we'll have classes in person again. Yeah. Anyway. We'll see. Like, anyway, I gotta get to my next class, but like, yeah, I'm not optimistic. Let's just say I haven't been optimistic this entire time with respect to this damn pandemic, and I haven't been wrong yet. So, yeah. Anyway. Take her easy, folks.